Okay, testing out the headset mic. Let me know if it's clear. If it's not, I can switch. Okay, this one should work. Secondary account. I'm going to just unplug it. So we have video if we want it. I'm trying to remove that so we can get rid of the background echo. Yes, celebrity vax victims are all fake. If you still think that some celebrities on TV died because of, I'm very curious about your logic. X happened before Y, therefore X caused Y. That makes sense in a very limited context, but it just seems like everybody who Let me bring this one on board. Okay, so I have the backup audio on. This will work just fine for the time being. As far as recording it, though, that's the reason why there's an issue here. I'm trying to record because we have a lack of recent updates. So I'm trying to determine the best way to record this thing. Maybe I have a setting here. Yeah, the audio is on. I'm just trying to find a way to record it so we can do some archives. I haven't been able to keep anything because the YouTube generally deletes my live streams immediately after, and it does it by default. It's a weird setting. Or the phone overheats. We're in triple digits here, and the temperature causes the phone to shut down, which actually causes YouTube to auto terminate. Yeah, Travis Scott's going to be at the pyramid. Now, about these dates, like he'll be 11,777 days old. I'm not convinced that it means that much. I would have to look at some mundane events and see if there are similar connections. And then, are we to assume that these numbers are intrinsically meaningful, enough to where it presupposes some kind of a patterning? Because some of these things are too nuanced and too, it's almost like I got to look into it, is what I'm saying. I got to look into it. Like sometimes it's pretty obvious. 333 days after this happens, or George Floyd's death, 330 days later, Derek Chauvin convicted. There's obviously a great deal of planning. I'm not switching to StreamYard. We're doing multicasting, and I have everything I need. I just need a better internet connection. And we're also running the 24/7 replay stream. The chat, the think tank chat needs to be the main priority here. We can no longer rely on Discord. Discord is flooded with federal agents, and for the most part, a bunch of I think they're just actors more or less, but shills. I'm interested though in having guests and callers, but we have a very specific format, And one thing too, I'm kind of I'm going to be sticking to some rules as we move forward. Yeah, what is the significance of 11,777 days? That's what I'm asking. Like, what makes it more significant than 11,776? Rihanna performs at the Super Bowl 12,777 days old, if you count the end date. No, I'm not saying there's no significance. I'm asking if it's definitive and what that number means. Like, what does the number 11,777 mean to you? Like, what does it mean specifically? And how are we supposed to know that has a very specific meaning? That's kind of what I'm getting at. I'm not a Kabbalist, and I'm not really a gematria person, although I recognize patterns. But I'm interested in knowing what these numbers mean. Like, what does 777 mean? Or is every number the devil, which is how some people tend to interpret it, or confirmation that you're looking at the devil? Because one of the reasons why I kind of got away from gematria
is a lot of people use it for confirmation bias. The QAnoners really, really developed a thing with gematria, and they made kind of a bastardized version of it where they'd be like, if Dan Scavino tweets at 3:17 p.m., then you take Q drop from March 17th, and then you find any matching words and you connect them with a line and you put it on Twitter. And people make these connections. But what does it really mean? And has it meant anything so far? I mean, the plan, whatever happened to that? But I am interested. Like, I do mind map things out. Like, for example, today's 7/11. It's the 40, I guess this would make it what, the 43rd anniversary? No, the 44th anniversary of Skylab falling. Well, 2 years ago on 7/11, Richard Branson blasted off into space, and that may have had some significance. The date 7/13, a lot of very significant blackout situations. So I've been definitely noting some correspondences. Or Donald Trump, Mar-a-Lago raid. You take that date and you look at 33, no, it's actually, I think it was, yeah, 33 weeks and 3 days, and then he gets the indictment. But again, I'm looking for discernible patterns. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to mystify, because I've noticed there's a tendency to mystify predictive programming. In fact, that's one of the main enemies of the truth getting out. To be honest, one of the primary obstacles to the truth about fake media and what it really means getting out and how fake it actually is. One of the things that buries the truth is this tendency by truthers to mystify predictive programming. They're like, oh, look, this here might indicate that the entire thing is some kind of staged psychodrama psyop. Or you can look at it and say, this is proof that there are dark occultists who are telling us what they're going to do in advance. Well, they're not going to do it because it's not something they actually do. It's a psyop. It's fake. Commenter says a bunch of people look. People had heart attacks before the anti-vax psyop, and this is what's really powerful to me is the cognitive bias. And once they turn it on, it's like mind control. Like with the anti-vax thing. Now, every death is the vax. Every death, every miscarriage, any kind of uptick in anything at all, they're going to attribute to that. It's just a bias thing when you really get down to it. But they plant the bias with suggestion, and it's pretty insidious. And my question for a lot of the anti-vaxxers or anti-vaxxer activists, and look, you're an anti-vaxxer activist if you're publishing content on it, if you're warning people, like, I'm going to cry wolf. But why do people feel so comfortable crying wolf online? Why not get a sign and stand on the street corner? But also, I'm very curious as to who you're trying to protect or who you're trying to save. Because I think this tendency to want to save other people is very fascinating, left and right. Commenter says, what are the patterns are actually creative liberty, and the effect is to drive those who can see insane. It's there, it's real, but by nature, it's a red herring. Well, the thing is, what the patterning in the mass media entertainment specifically, but also celebrities and all the printed matter, all the video games, the patterning actually reinforces the news that it predicts. So I look at it as just, it's not that it's for truthers to notice. It's not a sly wink to the smart people. No, the existence of predictive programming and patterning within the media itself, to me, is just showing how, or demonstrating how uniform it is in its purpose of creating a uniform worldview. It's all integrated. It can be explained. It has nothing to do with karma. It has nothing to do with bad guys who want to tell you what they're going to do. It's not chicken feed and it's not a distraction. You're looking at the architecture that you're not supposed to see. Nobody's trying to show you with little clues or hints. Anybody who's dropping clues or hints but not telling you the big picture is a gatekeeper. Look at InfoWars. They're like, oh, look, there's a train wreck in Ohio, and it looks just like the one in the movie White Noise. Dark occultists are doing this. It's a revelation of the method. There's no such thing as revelation of the method. There are no dark occultists. What you're looking at here is the worldview shaping mechanism of the media, and you're noticing how it operates every day. This is the rule, not the exception. But the fact is, people are only noticing it now and correlating it because we have the internet to talk about it. But most people who are noticing it aren't separating it from the general news itself. So they're seeing these things as anomalies. And this is where we are. Commenter says, my dad died. Okay, look, anybody who comes in here pushing anti-vax propaganda, it's very suspect. Like, I don't believe you. I just straight up think you're a lying propagandist or a shill. Anti-vax is a huge shill movement. And I always get these people who are, it's like, look, it's been 3 years. Why are you still an activist for it? And you obviously suck at that if your own family, like one guy called, it's like, yeah, I got 3 family members who died of cancer because of it. It's like, well, good job, truther. If it was actually real, you didn't prevent anything. But I'm sick of anti-vax, just a personal statement. I think it's a silly position to take. And I think it's one of the most heavily shilled anti-truth movements out there. It's just as bad as pro-vax. And you get these crisis actors like, oh, my cousin's friend, or this person says, my dad just developed Parkinson's after it. Like, honestly, I think you're lying. And I think the purpose of your lying is to shut down channels like mine. You're not saving lives, obviously. Uh, 6079 says, you call your longtime supporters commenter. Sometimes they say commenter if I can't read the name. Well, look, I'm not an anti-vax activist. If you are, go do it. Go be an activist. Go try to save Democrats from something. But my real question is, like, why don't you stop them from smoking cigarettes or drinking alcohol? Like, what are you trying to save them from? A potential side effect that's not as bad as what you'll get from long-term drug use? I'm a little sick of it because it's obviously controlled opposition. And if you're carrying water for the controlled opposition, I have to ask you why. Claiming that the vax is killing people or hurting people is just the same thing as saying COVID's doing it. It's like, oh, sorry, I just don't believe it. And one other, Lean Dion, Michael Hoffman gave us the revelation of the method meme. Now, Michael Hoffman's book, Psychological Warfare, Secret Societies, very good stuff. However, they assume everything's real. They're false flaggers. That's pretty much the case uniformly. And look, you have and I describe this as MSM, MSM plus, MSM minus. Are you accepting the screen at face value, like a mainstream mediated mind? Or are you adding on to it? MSM plus. Are you accepting it at face value but suggesting there's more to the story? Or are you subtracting the unverifiable, which is what we do here? And the anti-vax position is an MSM plus position. It's not a position you take from subtracting the unverifiables. It's a position you take by believing and adding on. And I'm just a non-believer. I'm an atheist when it comes to mass media superstition. But I find it very suspect, is all I'm saying. Like, if you're somebody who's pushing anti-vax and you don't have your own platform or your own channel, then you're not taking any risks. What you're doing is you're risking my channel for something I consider to be total BS. Which I'm not a censor at all, but I'm asking, where's your channel? I'll promote it. Like, hey, this guy's trying to save Democrats from side effects of their own decisions. Go over there and listen to him. Like, put yourself out there. You put yourself out there as a crisis actor. I mean, sorry, as a victim. Yep, my dad got this disease because of this. Well, go tell everybody. Start your own channel. Get a sign that says, if you get the pokey, you will get Parkinson's. Why? Like you could be like RFK Jr. You could be an anti-vax crusader. But why, as an anti-vax crusader, would you go to the one channel on the internet that thinks you're full of crap? Why? Like I'm the one person here. I'm the one person on the internet who will not give you an audience anymore. I'm done with it. And it's not that I'm anti or pro. I just don't care. But I think that it's a foot bullet to give a platform to people who don't have their own platform. So what's your platform? Where's yours? Where's your platform where you can stand on, that's what I always say to the people who are anti-gun. There's nothing they love more than a pile of dead kids to grandstand on. So I'm saying, why don't you get on a channel and talk to people about how your dad has Parkinson's because. But anyway, I just don't care about the issue. It's a controlled opposition issue, just like chemtrails and all these others. And I'm kind of at the point where we're a little more advanced when it comes to deconstructing media than to fall for these very simple uh, dialectics that are designed to keep you focused on the center stage. Yeah, exactly. I'm here for the truth, period. And we don't get the truth by accepting hearsay. When some anon with no channel, no website claims that he's got a family member who's a victim, that's not evidence. But again, that's another topic, I guess. I mean, I kind of thought the topic would have died. I'm just not interested in it. Like at this point, there was no Vaxageddon. There's no waves of deaths. So what's the actual thing now that you're advocating for? But ultimately, I think it was a compliance test, and two, it was a way to purposefully divide society into those who are fully copacetic with scientism and those that aren't. Matrix says they can see that you're controlled opposition and go back and listen to you talk and mention agents in place. Well, no, I mean, I don't know what you mean by that specifically, if you're talking about me or not. Like, I'm totally off script. Controlled opposition is pro-vax. I mean, that's opposite. Well, it depends on how you look at it. From the point of view of the mainstream media, it's pro-vax. And the counter narrative is the anti-vax. And I'm saying the counter narrative is actually controlled opposition. And I think it's mostly superstition for the most part. It's science fiction. I would have, look, I thought it was a cool issue. I think we talked about it in 2020, 2021. 2022 came around, and 2023, it's ancient history. And I think that anti-vax is a cool little sandbox, but I think it's mostly full of bullshitters, liars, and feds. And I think it's a fake issue systematically censoring the counter narrative. It's actually it's like a foot bullet. That's what I've been calling it. And you say you're not pushing anything, just sharing my experience. No, you're pushing it because you went on the internet to publish an account of how your family member got damaged by this thing. Regular people, just out on the streets, if I look out on the streets out there, regular people aren't like, I'm going to go online and publish some warnings about this thing, but anonymously with nothing specific attached to it to make it even slightly believable. So I kind of think that you're either a dupe or an agent. And I don't follow either, but like for the most part, that's how I think anti-vax works. I think it's mostly driven by agents and well-intentioned dupes. But when you really dig into it, I have yet to find any credible victims. Commenter says you sound like an infomercial for Bill Gates. You sound like an infomercial for the mainstream media with their fake bad guys. Oh, look, if you're on the right, you got to hate Bill Gates. Isn't it funny how right wingers hate Bill Gates? Right wingers think he's the devil. Left wingers think he's a savior. Like, I just think he's a fake character. I don't even believe in pandemics. I don't believe in pandemics. I don't believe in the pandemic model. I don't think that Wuhan was real. And I think anti-vax is not the truth. I think it's a controlled opposition to keep you on the world stage, believing in the virus, but disagreeing over the solution. Now, Realist Weed, who says I sound like an infomercial for Bill Gates, do you believe in viruses? Because if you do, I'll say you sound like a shill for big scientism. Reed says this broadcast was brought to you by China. You see, this is exactly what I thought. You probably think that the virus was manufactured in a lab. So you think it's real, but they're lying about the cause of it. And that's where I'm really disagreeing. But I don't care anymore if I offend anti-vaxxers, fine. Zara says, what's the point then, Tim? Let's talk about something else. Then by 2050, we'll know who was right. See, 2050 is moving it too far back. Look at the climate change thing. Why are we still giving that benefit of the doubt? I think the longer it goes on, like if you always push the goalpost back, then you can never prove yourself wrong. Like I was totally I was open to the possibility. Okay, they're going to kill us all. I was open to it for a minute there. I was like, okay, I guess possibly, but it's been 3 years. Come on. Audrey Horseman says, you people are crazy as hell. Well, I'm not crazy. I think I'm one of the sanest people on the plane because I'm not falling for every little script. And I'm not falling for their new superstitions. I think vaxophobia is a superstition. I mean, show me some evidence beyond pointing at Bill Gates and telling me he's scary, or Dr. Fauci, or whoever, whatever bad guy they put up for you. Like, I think a lot of you are just afraid. I think a lot of anti-vaxxers are afraid to admit that they're wrong. Same with the Mandela effect. There's a point where once the premise has been debunked, you just got to let it go and move on. But to continue to move the goalpost, it went from they're going to kill us all to they're going to sterilize some people, or some people might get side effects. And they keep on moving it to where it doesn't even resemble the original thing they were organized against. Nicotrama says it's like Lloyd Miller sent his minions into the chat. Yeah, well, people get mad when I say I don't believe in climate change if they're on the left. On the right, they say, good for you. But if I say I don't believe in chemtrails, on the right, they'll say, how dare you? So what we're talking about here are beliefs. And non-believers being looked at as scum. And I think that's a very pre-enlightenment way of looking at things, meaning judging people based on whether or not they accept something without evidence or on bad evidence. Yeah, I think that for the most part, if I mean, look, I'm not even skating to choices. I think you're an agent. I think you're an agent. I think that you're either an agent or you're lying on behalf of one. I don't believe you that your dad got Parkinson's from the shot. And why you would lie like that, I'm not really sure. I think it's a form of virtue signaling, honestly. I think it's virtue signaling. I think if you really believed it, you would be taking action, not sitting here on the internet. Where's your channel? If I took my dog to get a shot and my dog got sick, I would sue the hell out of the vet. I would ruin their business. And yet here, like, oh, my dad's screwed up now, but I'm just going to blab about it to the internet. And if you don't agree with me, I'm going to call you a shill. Meanwhile, I'm not going to go after the doctor. That's why I don't believe it. And I've noticed that there are paid liars and agents all over the place. That's why we got out of Discord. Our Discord server got shut down over anti-vax. And none of them saved any lives. If you're an anti-vaxxer and you've saved a life, raise your hand. Most of them are like, no, I watched my family members die. It's like, oh, you didn't do anything to stop it. And again, if I was political about it, I would say, why are you trying to save the Democrats? You want to win the next election. You want to beat the deep state. Well, their own voters are going to auto exterminate. But look, like I said, I'm a non-believer. And here's why. I'm firmly convinced that the introduction of the pandemic model and the lockdowns and the vaccine was all part of introducing the religion of scientism ubiquitously. I think it's more than anything, it's just a statement of faith that you believe in the virus and you believe in the cure. Now, the people who don't get it believe in it, but they don't believe in the cure. Or they believe in horse paste, like horse paste, ivermectin, or malaria drugs. So they still believe in it. What's up, King TL? Yeah, hey, today's the first day in the new office. Hmm. Echo Charlie says, Tim, some Charlie Manson cult killer got out of jail today, helter skelter. I saw that. Look, if you're anti-vax, another question I would have for you is, are you smoking cigarettes or are you anti-cigarette? If you're anti-vax and you're not anti-cigarette, you're not consistent. Because cigarettes can be demonstrated to have a whole lot of negative side effects, to be dangerous for your health. That can be demonstrated. And that's not counting other things that are connected to it, like, people falling asleep with a cigarette in a fire or blowing their face up because they got an O2 tank. Like, cigarettes are dangerous. But if you're not anti-cigarette, why? I guess you're pro-cigarette. I guess that you're just shilling for big cigarette, for big tobacco. Look at all these big tobacco shills in here. Zara says Greta had to delete a tweet saying we'd be underwater by this year. Oh yeah, she's made many predictions that have not come true. But I think you have to hold people to their predictions. And I gave anti-vaxxers until the end of 2022. Diana South says no novel coronavirus. It was a play. It was fake. Yeah, remember the cover art for The Economist 2017 winter? It said the new shape of Chinese influence, sharp power. And it had a COVID looking thing, a ball, a globe covered in spikes, and the China part was red, but novel shape, Chinese influence, influenza. All the predictive programming tells you the thing was fake. Zara says, all the whistleblowers about chemtrails and weather manipulation are whistling Dixie. Yeah, I'm saying that the chemtrail fanatics, the chemtrail theorists are basically on Team Greta. Look, I'm sorry, I'm against the grain. I really am. I'm against the grain of trutherism because I realize what they've done here is the media's lying. We know this. But they have this invented counter narrative for everything. So it keeps you from exiting the media's worldview altogether. They give you perfect alternatives. So, for example, chemtrails are real to the right wing, but not to the left wing. Why is that? How is it so partisan? Climate change doesn't exist for the right wing, but it exists for the left wing. But through chemtrail theory, which is entirely flawed, they've convinced chemtrail theorists that man can change the climate. That's the basic premise behind climate change, anthropogenic global warming. That's what we've been debating. We've been debating, does man affect climate? And the answer should be no. We've been fighting against it, and yet they managed to backdoor that premise in through chemtrail theory. And people will say, well, what are they spraying? What are they spraying? What makes you think they're spraying anything? That question is a loaded question. And you can prove they're not spraying anything if you look at how the condensation trails actually form behind the plane, which is moving. And you can actually calculate that distance. So it's not actually coming out of a nozzle. The condensation is actually occurring behind the plane after it passes. But look, I'm pro anti-vax, I'm pro-vax, I'm pro getting the truth out here. But as best as I can discern, and I've looked at this full time for the last 3 years, the best I can discern, anti-vax is totally controlled opposition to pro-vax. And it's all about the introduction of the concept of the God as man's savior being replaced by government as man's savior. So you have your concept of the new concept of God, the God construct, really is the globe, the angry globe that floods the world. But the devil's been reintroduced through the virus, the pandemic, or the panic demic. And This is the devil the atheists will believe in. And the atheists believe that they can be saved from this devil. And so they've used the template of these old religions and they've updated it with scientism. And they're not killing everybody, they're saving everybody, or rather, inducting them into this new cult. You got the biggest religion in the world is scientism. And what religion wants to kill its own followers? It's all about outnumbering the non believers. Let's see here. Commenter says Jimmy Dore says, let everyone have their piece, and then he has a standard vaxes are great and effective. I just think it's a red herring, to be straight up. I think it's a red herring. I could care less about the topic other than just pointing out that the vaccine is the communion wafer. You see, it's all about salvation. It's very fascinating when you get down to it because it's all split. Everything is bifurcated. Left fears the pandemic. Left fears virus and super spreaders who don't trust the science. They don't trust the doctrines for the church of scientism. That's left fearing right. But right fears left because of not the pandemic born virus, but the old school version, which is still sin. You see, virus is an updated version of sin. That's basically what it comes down to. You could say that the original sin is your carbon footprint, but the wickedness that's going to bring about global warming is what? It's your carbon footprint. But they've introduced these concepts, like they've reintroduced these things from the old paradigm. Everything's just been more or less recycled. But when it comes to the pandemic thing, what it really did is it kind of forced society to split. But what I'm seeing here is that the right wing may not believe in the new devil so much, but they sure still hold on to the old devil. And that's why the left wing is super anti, or they're super scientism. They're all about scientism. It's their faith, right? They really believe in it and they believe they're being saved. And they think the other side is just the epitome of evil and ignorance, that they're going to kill us all. But it's a mutual feeling. The right wing is like the left wing is going to corrupt us all. They believe in not viruses, but social contagion. They still believe in sin. And their solutions are pretty much the same. You'll notice that the powers that be have orchestrated things so that each group wants to self segregate and quarantine. I've got this mind map and this chart that I want to really use as a basis for this talk. I'm just glossing over it. But I have a conference room around the corner, and I have a big dry erase board, which will be very useful. Zareth is suggesting that he says they spray the skies near me for the last 25 years. It's like a terrarium, hot, sweaty heat waves, but I guess it's in my head. If you're asserting that they spray the skies and they're altering the weather, that's a pretty big claim. But when you say spray, do you mean that something is coming out of the plane, like they got like a liquid or a powder? Is there something in the fuel that's actually coming out? And the reason I ask is that the condensation trail explanation has a scientific basis. You can make observations. Condensation trails exist. That's just a fact. Condensation trails exist. Chemtrails don't actually have any evidence other than people are calling contrails chemtrails. But among chemtrail theorists, a large swath of them no longer look at condensation trails. They say, oh, those are contrails. But the real threat is the stratospheric aerosol injection. So they moved the goalpost. So now we're looking at stratospheric atmospheric injection, which has nothing to do with the lines in the sky. Angle of Elevation says, being an anti-vax has become the equivalent of being anti-Semite or QAnon. It's an excuse to fill your chat with hate bots in order to silence you. Yeah, that's kind of what I think it is. And that's what I'm saying. It's a foot bullet. So there's nobody here, like literally, there's 58 people listening. There's no one here who's marching blindly to go get poked because, like, nobody's acting on that right now. It shouldn't even be a conversation. Like, it's done. And yet it keeps getting rehashed. Why is that? It's being artificially ginned up out of all the things we could be talking about. But who keeps bringing it up? People who aren't victims of it, people who aren't going to use it. People are what, trying to warn who? So I'm just like, I'm kind of over the topic, and I feel like everybody knows. So if somebody really needs to know, just go to the person making the comments channel. That's why I was saying of that one individual, it's like, well, if you're truly a victim of this and now you're going to be an advocate for the anti stance, create a channel and I'll direct people to you. I will send out an email and say, hey, go listen to this guy's testimony, if that's what it takes to show that I'm still all for the truth. But I don't think it's useful to spend a lot of time on a government manufactured counter narrative. Truth or chicken feed. And they have systematically silenced all of our channels. They shut down our Discord over it. But I think I have the strongest point, and no one else is making this point outside of our group here. But I really do think that they've reintroduced these archaic religious concepts and superstitions under the guise of scientism, and that the introduction of the virus and the dialectic between the vaxxed and the unvaxxed is by design saved and unsaved. It's all part of a religious war that they've created. And what's more, they don't want universal salvation. They don't want everybody to be saved. They want half to be saved so they can fight the other half. And just as everything is bifurcated, they have a left wing version. So the left wing has the pandemic, the right wing is worried about moral panicdemic. And this is something I want to get into in detail tomorrow. The moral panic that we're seeing, which is a reaction to provocations intended and directed, I think, at the believers in the Judeo-Christian faith. Like, I really think that the people who believe in scientism have completely embraced all these progressive social changes that are antagonistic to the values of the right. And this is by design. This is to create a pandemic and a moral panicdemic thing where, like, the left fears COVID, it's the new devil. The right fears Satan. So they still have to provide Satan in the world. They still do provide the moral panic or the satanic panic material. And the satanic panic of the 80s was an engineered psyop. And I'm saying that the QAnon is kind of the same thing. It's a new satanic panic. And this satanic panic is an engineered psyop targeting the right. So they fear the left, just as the left fears the right over the pandemic and its response to that. And what's more, I was listening to right wing pundit Tim Pool, and he said a couple of things that stood out to me. He said that he thinks that the reason why the trans or gender ideology is spreading is social contagion. They're catching it. They're catching sinful behaviors. And then what's more, he said it's also bisphenol A, stuff in the plastic. So in other words, I think he said endocrine disruptors. So the right wing believes that the progressive lifestyle is being spread through essentially pandemic or contagion. It's a contagious thing. You catch it, and you catch it because your endocrine system's been disrupted because of products and chemtrails, and then you see the stuff on TV and you're exposed to it, and you catch it, and then you spread it. So it's kind of fascinating here because, again, left wing doesn't believe in Satan, right wing doesn't believe in the virus, or they think it's staged and fake. But each of them has an excuse to quarantine from the other. And remember, I talked about this in 2020. It's like, hey, look, you've got the holy water hand sanitizer, you have the social distancing, and then you also have the quarantining. It was basically, it turned out to be I called it a puritanical revolution. It was very puritanical what they did. The way that they were able to instill this new value system based on this new concept of sin. But the old school version of sin is still going strong and it's targeting the right. And this is the part I want to show the mind map that I put together on this because I think it's so engineered, it's so well designed. And what's more, I've noted that the pundits on the far right are pushing the predictive programming for the psyops they're going to get behind and driving the narratives. It's fascinating to watch. We talked about this leading up to the death of Jordan Neely, how among the right, there were memes that they would put out there. Get out of the cities, get out, get out, get out of the cities. And they would show subway violence, constantly showing us subway violence and warning us, get out of the cities. And this all led up to the right wing getting behind Daniel Penny as something of a hero in the subways, the vigilante. And they built up this narrative over a period of time. Marjorie Taylor Greene calling New York Gotham, saying we need some Batman, some vigilantes. This was an entirely constructed narrative, months in the making. And what's more, the movie Get Out, again, that meme by Jordan Peele, has a lot of predictive programming for the subway killing of Jordan Neely. Exalt says global warming 9/11 truthing has been diluted by COVID truthing. Well, they phase things out. Like you notice, nobody right now cares anymore about radical Islam. What happened to that? What happened to radical Islam? Are they not radical anymore? What happened to stealth jihad and Muslims taking over government with Obama? What happened to that? It's gone. Now it's about the Chinese and Chinese taking over police stations. They just update the skits or the scripts every so often. It's like 19 years they flip it. Now I noticed too, a lot of the 9/11 truthers, because 9/11 truth is dead. I mean, 9/11 truth was always stuck on the false flag theory, blaming Bush, blaming Israel. None of them realized it was fake. Now that has been thoroughly exposed, 9/11 truthers all went into anti-vax. They became anti-vax truthers. Now instead of being anti-Islam, now they're anti-China. But it's the same exact template. Okay, I think we're having some issues with the connection. Again, this is more or less a test. I don't know how well this test is going to go, but hopefully we didn't say anything that will censor us. But this is a great start. We're going to have a morning IPS deprogram, evening open phones. If I can get my internet connection on tomorrow, we'll be doing it. We'll be doing the open phones. Yeah, when COVID happened, ISIS went into retreat. ISIS disappeared. And I'm like, what happened? What happened to radical Islam? It was like all of a sudden, it was like COVID-19, 19 years later, after 19 hijackers, they just flipped the script and that no longer seemed to perturb any of the right wingers. Like I said, it's just too absurd how they can just flip the switch like this. It can't be real. But we had an advantage here. Most people fell for 9/11 because you had no choice. You didn't have the option to find the truth about it. And it took a little while to undo the damage, to rethink things and recontextualize it. But we knew in advance that the COVID thing was going to be what it was. We pre-auto hoax things these days, which is the way you should do it anyway. There's no reason to give benefit of the doubt to any pathological liar, much less like the media is a pathological liar. It's like their next shooting might be real. Maybe the next truck attack will be real. Maybe the next big thing will be real. Nope, doesn't work that way. Or maybe it's going to go kinetic. Maybe they're going to stop faking it one of these days. Like I was actually chastised by a truther. They said, when it goes real and kinetic, all these people that you've been saying is fake aren't going to be ready. Right, right, because we're buying popcorn and not ammunition. Like there's been enough chicken littling and crying wolf that every truther out there ought to have a cabinet full of food storage and bullets. Exalt says, so many people have mind aids. Why are we immune? Well, are you immune? That would be a question I'd have to ask. I mean, you can be immunized, you can be inoculated against the mind war, but if you're still carrying around any false flags, if you still are carrying water for the mainstream media, you might not be entirely immune. But it's curable. You know, a lot of the stuff is ego based and it's fear based. Like not fear of being hurt, but fear of being outgrouped, fear of not fitting in with the peers, fear of not fitting in. That's a big part of how this thing works. And mind aids, if you didn't know what that means, mind aids is what happens when you've been conditioned to accept the screen as authority and you no longer have a mental immune system, so you believe whatever you see. Every mind virus gets through mind aids. But the movie Hot Skulls called it ARDS, acquired reasoning deficiency syndrome. And see, we've been engineered this way. They've engineered the society to have no mental immune system. They don't want you to be able to tell real from fake. They want you to be dependent on their appointed reality interpreters. Yeah, the fear of not fitting in is huge. They're all going to laugh at you. I think a lot of education in school is MK Ultra trauma-induced mind control, but not in the way people would think, you know, torture and your eyes are being pried open and they're showing you a bunch of movies, not Clockwork Orange. When I say MK Ultra, I mean fear-based mind control and fear of the mob, fear of the collective, fear of being cast out. They're all going to laugh at you. You know, even questioning the moon landing, you know, they condition people to laugh, and it's a very cruel laughter, and it's a laughter that says you're being rejected. And the I said that the media is a narcissistic construct as far as the personality of Big Brother, and the main power of the narcissistic authoritarian, or the main power of that control freak, is the power of rejection, the power to exile. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. And so the anti-vaxxers, as a big group, you know, are being exiled from they're being thrown out, and that the media is relentlessly attacking and savaging people, saying, "Don't invite them to Thanksgiving, exclude them, fear them." It's pretty cruel what they do. But this is also part of the narcissistic construct where it purposefully divides its victims or its targets into the favored group and the scapegoats. You have to have the bad and the good. And the bad group is designated bad, and they can never do good. And the group that's approved of can never do bad. It's a really sick dynamic that they've created in our society where they reward the worst, the most corrupt. I mean, if you think about it, it's perfectly calculated to punish the people who do good and to reward those that do bad. It's the best liars. I mean, if you think about it, the people with the highest levels of power and highest levels of media, highest levels of any of these big institutions are the ones who are let in on the big lies by necessity. I mean, it's a need to know basis, but it's hard for people, I think, to recognize that they've been following liars or dupes. And that's another question I ask people. What would you rather follow, a liar or a dupe? An agent or somebody who's been fooled by agents? Because I would say they're both worthless. One is obviously evil, and the other is foolish. And so when we look at these various promulgators of mainstream narratives or alternative narratives, you have to know that they're either in the know or they're just foolish and insulated or corrupt, where they don't care one way or the other. Season. And I have a lot of ideas moving forward. In fact, we'll talk about this more tomorrow. I want to talk about Code Monkey Z, Code Monkey Z, Ron Watkins, big name with the election flipping thing, 33 years old at the time, believed to be Q. But he's going to start a Substack to start exposing people or revealing psyops. So what they're doing now, I'm realizing, and it's because of us, they've taken the word psyop. Even Musk has used it. And they've replaced false flag. They're really using psyop to muddy the term. And I'm thinking we need to make a firm stand against this and hold on to definitions. But I also want to point out that they are attempting, I think, to diffuse what we are actually bringing to the table here. And yeah, Lean Dion, psyop is trendy. You're right. They're using that term because they want to take it out of our hands. They want people to think a psyop just means calling news fake. Remember, fake news used to mean something? And then Trump said, oh no, CNN is fake news. They're doing the same thing to the word psyop that they did to fake news. Okay, well, anyway, this has been a test. I hope it worked out well enough. I don't know if I'm going to archive this, but I have notes for tomorrow. We're in the office. I'll post some pictures in the newsletter. And look, when I'm opening up phones, so if you want to debate me on vaccines, if you want to debate me on chemtrails, I'm 100% okay with that. We can talk about it. I'm not a gatekeeper, and I'm open to being educated 100%. I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing to not only be wrong, but to revise everything that I'm saying based on new information. And that's because my mind is infinite. It's not a closed system. And that's ultimately what this IPS thing has always been. It's about, are we in an open or a closed system? And the world as we know it, the world stage is a closed system. It happens to be finite. You might as well consider it to be flat. And when Elon Musk put a limit to how many tweets you can read per day, the limit is so far away that nobody's alarmed by it. But what they did is they put a dome over the infinite plane of tweets. Infinite, meaning any number of ideas can just find their place here and get thrown into the mix, but not anymore. No, they've actually they're putting limits on it because they want to make sure it's finite, a closed system. And once they've put the barriers, then they can begin the process of purification, which is what we're living through right now. And although we've been exiled, we managed to find a home outside of their closed, limited world. We rafted up on the outside, on the fringe, thus the penguin. But all of this is going into a movie documentary thing I'm putting together here to explain what this auto hoaxer is, because we're defining it. It's not the media. The media likes to malign and as we all know, conspire racists. But what we're doing is sort of outside of their purview. And I don't think that they want to directly confront what we're doing because it's not based on something they control. It's not a counter narrative. Yep, the office though, this is a major leap forward. Thanks everyone who helped make this happen. This is going to make it much easier to maintain everything. And I'm talking about all of our projects 24/7 and steady channel growth. So it's a stable ground zero. Anyway, I'll be back. I'll be sending out a newsletter tonight. This was just a test.